Evening, everybody, and welcome from the very sweatiest depths of the United Kingdom. We are broadcasting all the way over the pixelated globe to the Hungarian for the GPVWC Hungarian Grand Prix for the Superleague, our top tier echelon of sim racing. My name is Simon Smith. As ever, I'm never alone on Cameraman Extraordinaire. We have Mr. Cameron Brewster, and alongside me, as ever, is Monsieur Matthew Williams. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, although a bit warm and sweaty as well.
Yes. All have some weird bear fest going on afterwards. Grr, I'm a bear. But I tell you what else was a bear out on track. Harley Hamnet taking his second pole in a row this season. And apologies we weren't able to bring you a broadcast for the German Grand Prix, but Harley stuck it on pole there, and he's gone and done the same here on what is a very different track, this Hungarian ring. But the Hawkeye, as you was noting in qualifying, Matt, was pretty damn spot on.
Absolutely. I mean, so that Hawkeye car, it's been pretty handy all year. They've brought some upgrades last round, and it paid dividends there. It's definitely paid dividends here. Honestly, I mean, it was, as a driver, you look at it, and that's the car you want. It turned when the driver turned the wheel, it accelerated beautifully, it had wonderful traction. In particular, around the last corner, this tight hairpin, he was able to take just as much speed through it as those who were sort of compromising their line to get an early, a late apex to try and carry as much speed as they can for a quali lap. So Hawkeye evidently well hooked up, and it should prove for a fascinating race here. Hungarian, not normally one to lend itself to overtaking, so I have to see if he's able to maintain that leading position all the way to the finish line.
Definitely. A couple of driver changes in on the Super League for this race. Tom Parker makes his first race start for the Midnight Motorsports car, sharing that second seat throughout the year now with Alex Cooper, who came home second last time out. So Parker, you've got a quite high bar to be aiming for, but he'll be starting third on the grid today. Also out there in a new spot is David Juntz, standing in for the show racing driver of Ruud Heesterbeek. So a little bit of a swapsy around there. Also in, Olli Pelkonen is back for Woods Racing. That's his first one, taking over from their mainstays. And towards the back as well, Mark Stanton is making his first start for Target Racing as well. So welcome to you guys. And just going for a quick run through the championship stand-ins before we go into who we think very well here today. Lewis Redshaw leads with 195 points, just one clear of David Feidek after finishing third to his first in Germany. Giuseppe Ranieri DNF'd for the third time this year and is now on 121, so it's quickly becoming a two-horse race in that battle. Fourth is Nick Rowland for in fifth it's Ruud Heesterbeek, not here today. Davidus Basilis is sixth for Red Archer. Then it's Harley Hamnet, Gergo Baldi for the Hawkeyes, Tom Vanderbilt for Nijo, and Lee Morris, who's been absolutely fun time. Hopefully he'll come back with us. 38 drivers have taken part and scored, well, potentially scored so far. In the constructors, it's CSG way clear from Midnight, who are way clear from the battle for third between Nijo and Hawkeye, and that will be a fascinating one to watch, with Red Archer, Torrent Motorsport, Bodball and Norjo, 7th, 8th, ahead of Hawkeye, Kerno, Green Stripes, with Phoenix Target, Woods and ST. Woods finally scoring some points and leapfrogging them in the battle for the Woodens. Who do you think will do well today then, Matt?
So obviously you've got your CSGs and your Midnights, who they've got some brilliant cars underneath all of those drivers. So of course don't write those guys off. But I think just the nature of this track, and obviously the strong position that both Hawkeye cars are, you know, they're both in the top 5, I believe, after quali. You know, they will be able to put on a charge, I'm sure. And of course, the other factor we have here at the Hungarian ring is it's very rarely used for racing, and as a result, the surface is very abrasive, and tyre wear and fuel, it's all going to be a big factor. We did actually have a few drivers qualify on the primes, just to perhaps try that counter strategy. So there's plenty of stuff to keep an eye on, and I'm going to keep an eye on the green stripe cars, because they were pretty handy on their primes.
Yeah, and that's one of the things actually. For the first time this season, I think we've seen almost a nigh on even tyres between options and primes in qualifying, and it was something that I personally found in the Formula Challenge race. I couldn't actually get to the end of a race on those stint of tyres. Wondering exactly how much of that will play a part of throughout this race.
Yeah, it should be fascinating strategically, and I'm sure we're going to get some good racing. Hungarian ring, always a good one to watch a bit of brinksmanship and gamesmanship, of course.
Absolutely, no more iron curtains here, although I could do with a curtain around that sun. My goodness me. Whoa! Do you know what? I actually went to a corner store and bought an ice cream today. That is how redonkulous the English weather is. I broke out in sweats and everything.
I think I made the classic mistake of wishing for rain. That's,
Ooh. Do you know what? I bow my cap to you. You are a true Brit. As long as you didn't use the word muggy today, I think we're all right.
Nope, that was not uttered, so I think we're okay.
Okay, so hopefully everyone will get round the first lap okay. We just see a few smash-ups in the lower leagues. Remember, you can use the hashtag GPVWC to tweet us your comments as the race goes through. We're normally seeing you chirping away throughout. Just a quick note, ST are only on one car here this evening. I'm not sure how things up to, but he's not here. And we're also on just one of something else as well, because we've actually only got 26 drivers on the grid, so we'll see how that works.
We've just got the grid forming up now, and as they start formation, that will take you through the final order. As we say, we've only got the 26 cars this evening, but with that fairly limited overtaking opportunity, you never know how, if there's a bit of contact here or there, any of those 26 could profit.
Indeed, so taking us off the start line grid, there's Harley Hamnet for Hawkeye, a superb pole, narrowly ahead of Lewis Redshaw, both of those missing their final qualifying lap actually, because they hit the start line as the timing reached 0. Third is Tom Parker from Midnight Motorsports. Welcome to the Super League back again, good man. They'll give you hugs on your journey. David Fiduk in 4th position, still not off that podium, such a hogger. 5th position is Gergo Boldy for Hawkeye, ahead of Nick Rowland in 6th for Midnight Motorsports. 7th is Davidus Basilis for Red Archer, doing another fine job, ahead of Mikhail Tumala, who's really stuck that green stripes up where it's not been very much this season, in 8th. There are 2 Nijos, with Tom Vandervoort out-qualifying David Young for 9th and 10th, despite being on the prime tyres and John on the options. Tommy Hagan, that's probably his best start of the year, in 11th, and Tom Jacobs has binned it on the formation lap, but has hit the barrier in 12th. What a bizarre move. That was before he'd even hit the bump, and he's escaped out in that Norge zone, and he'll be starting from the pit lane. And drama there, so I was choosing not to call anyone out. You go, Matt.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, that's certainly unusual. But anyway, we will carry on. We now have Mort Wernerson, who will be starting P13, actually P12. He is followed by Bart de Vos, the 2 red oddball drivers there, nice together in the midfield, so they might be able to make some progress and work together. Then we have starting P15, Matt Richards in the Kerno car. He's followed by Tommy Kuvanen in the Green Stripes racing car. Keep an eye on that car. It looks pretty handy around here. Then we have Peter Kassa and Adam Rouse in the 2 Torrents there together as well. And look at all these guys, 2x2. We have Ollie Pelkinen and Roy Schroten in the Woods cars as well. Then we have Kieran Ryan, he starts P21 for Phoenix. And then there is Mark Stanton in the Target car, he starts P22. Pennant Quant is in P23 in the second of the Kerno cars. P24 is Miguris Columbus. Hopefully I've said your name vaguely correctly there. He's racing for Target Racing tonight. And in P25 we have Mark Fuller. So,
I was just noticing, actually, sorry, just very quickly, it was Boyd Bryson has already left the game, so he was our other person that is missing from that ST, so Phoenix down to 1 before we started as well.
Disaster. So we've had some disconnections, we've got one car we start from the pit lane, all sorts, and we haven't even started a racing lap yet.
No, we bring you all the dramas here on GPVWC. So, for the first time of asking, and hopefully the final time of asking this evening, everyone's just about lined up on the grid. Yes, they are. The Hungarian Grand Prix for GPVWC Super League is about to get a good go. And Hamlet's bogged down off the line. Look at Redshaw, he's absolutely catapulted away. Well clear of the rest, but everyone else has kept still. Boldy being blocked heavily by Parker down into the first turn. Here they come under braking. Boldy runs out wide. There's contact between Tumala and Roland behind them. Rouse runs out quite wide, but I think has got away with it as well. And yeah, every one of the 24 have gone through. There's a bit more contact down at 2 with Vernonton coming out worse from Kassa and Kieran Ryan running out onto the grass too. But it looks as if everyone's still got their front wings just about as they're coming through to the end of Sector 1. But it's Redshaw from Hamnet, Parker, Fiduk and Boldy in top 5.
Absolutely, everyone has got through Sector 1 and Jacobs has just set off from the pit lane.
Pelkinen's off.
Oh, good spot. Yep, just saw him go sliding off in the background there. That's a pity. who's looking pretty handy there, but sure he'll be able to recover. There's still a long way to go. We do have 70 laps here this evening, so it's obviously not ideal start to your race, but there's still time to recover.
That was contact with Kieran Ryan going into turn 4 or 5, depending on what you count the little kink as. Contact for 12th position, Morton Bernison and Tommy Hagen clashing on a start, on an actual straight there. Bernison pushing Hagen out onto the curb, and Hagen loses the plate to Matt Richards, who goes round in the Kerno up into 12th position, doing a great stuff as he stands in for Louis Morris, who is continuing his absence here. But the end of lap 1 as they cross the line is Lewis Redshaw, who done the dirty and got ahead off the line from a Bolt Hamnet, who's under attack from Tom Parker. By no mean streak there. Then it's Videk and Boldy. Videk outside of a podium position for the first time in God knows how long. And Vanderbilt up to another cracking start for 6th position, so we've gained as well as Nick Rowland down to 7th, nearly loses it. Remember, he's on the prime tyre, but actually the top prime runner is Tom Vanderbilt.
Yeah, we do have actually quite a nice little clump here of prime runners. Our top 5 at the moment, all option runners. And we've got 3 prime runners. Then we've got David Yunt at the second Nido. He's running option, but we've got pretty much, other than Yunt there, the top 5 running on options, and then the following 5 almost all on prime. So all sorts going on. Other than that, actually, it's fairly mixed. So evidently 2 very distinct train of thoughts of tyre strategy, at least, in our top 10.
Definitely come to fruition later on in the race. Tommy Covenant ran wide at turn 4 and lost 4 positions in that as Rouse and Ryan and Co managed to get through. He's rejoined in 20th position. It seems such an arbitrary thing, but we've got sausage curves out there and they catch you out, so you have to slow down. You can no longer get the get out of jail free car as you cross the exit of that curb. And Polkadin into the pits is now gone 1 lap down as he is limping in now, but thankfully everyone getting through. Just continuing on their way. Great scrap going on as they cross the line for 12th position. It's Hagen and Richards. Kerno versus Red Archer, and I think Tommy Hagen would quite fancy that 12th place and dives through, gets that position beautifully done there as Bart de Vos and the Vodfall takes Petr Kaza for 14th directly behind, and Roy Schroten nearly spins it just behind them in 17th position, allowing Menno Klump through to 16th.
Yep, just keeping an eye on here between our leading quintuplet here, and actually Harley Hamlet, he might have had that poor start, but he set the fastest lap of the race. Well, we may only be on lap 3, but he set the fastest lap last time round, going just a little sminty bit quicker than Redshaw. So start besides, I think Harley is feeling pretty fired up. He wants to get ahead of that CSG, but Lewis is driving pretty nicely right now. And it is one thing to catch, quite another to overtake, especially around here. So I think strategy may have to come into this one. Everyone else in the top 5 seems to be fairly holding station at the moment, just perhaps preserving what they've got, maybe looking for an opportunity later on.
Well, I tell you what, the options versus the prime, I was wondering beforehand exactly how quick it was as Hamnet gets a great run out of the final turn. He might not have a go at Redshaw as they cross the line, but the top 5 drivers have already pulled out over 5 seconds from 6th place Tom Vanderbilt, who's holding up Nick Rowland quite dramatically. Hamnet can't have a go at Redshaw. I think Rowland is going to have a look at Vanderbilt for 6th position. He does. Vanderbilt late on the brakes, plenty of locking up, and that could have been a nasty end had they have not been more experienced drivers. They were a bit more hot-headed. 16th position, Petr Kaza being overtaken by Menno Klont. They also make a little touch on the exit too, as Roy Schroten overtakes Kieran Ryan again for 17th and 18th position. Got behind him.
Yes, Harley, he's taken another 10th out in this first sector against Redshaw. Now, there won't be a way through in this second sector, but there's definitely enough places to make your rival make a mistake, that's for sure. So, Harley, his car, evidently, it's quick straight off the bat. You know, we haven't had too many laps to get the cars up to temperature. Clearly, this Hawkeye really is working well with its current upgrades on board. And, well, perhaps the CSG has been known as the best car so far. Perhaps the Hawkeye's coming of age here as we go around turn 13 and 14 for our 4th time round here to move on to lap 5. We'll have to see what the gap is in a moment. The gap actually extended to 6 tenths, so that second sector not so kind of following the car, but the gap down to 3 tenths as we cross the line there. So evidently Harley looking quick in the first and last sectors, where meanwhile that CSG is absolutely dominant in that middle sector.
Having a little pokey nose down into turn 1. It's very difficult to pick your overtakings down here because if you ever go at 1, that leaves you exposed to 2 as Redshaw takes a completely wider line through 2, allowing Hamlet to get a right sniff up. I don't know if that was a mistake or not. Right onto the rear wing, but it's so difficult to do anything into that flick to the left-hand side because you're so committed. There's only really room for 1, isn't there? So you're quite limited in the overtaking moves normally around Hungarian, around Hungarian. I've not done many moves on a Hungarian, it has to be said, but really, turn 1 you can be redone at turn 2, and then you've got that attempted, they took out that lovely chicane, flip black, and made that into a potential overtaking move. I was done through there, but that's because I'm pants. I don't know if that's a genuine overtaking move once you're up to temperature though.
Well, one of the surprising things actually from the Formula Challenge races we had earlier in the week is the number of cars, as unfortunately Mark Fuller has just retired, there's a number of cars who are able to get round on the outside of some of these corners actually. Just being able to carry the momentum all the way around. So I have to see how it pans out, but Harley evidently had a much stronger middle sector there. He's only 4 tenths down and the gap's down to 3 tenths again. So clearly we've got perhaps a little trade-off in car setup here, trying to go for straight line speed in these first 2 sectors, which would allow for it, and CSV going to the wing. So this is going to be interesting. Of course, you do have somewhat overtaking opportunities, but as you say, very vulnerable in the subsequent corners. So if it's going to be a move, it's got to be done, and he's got to get himself in a defensive position pretty quickly.
Someone that has done a move is Nick Rowland. He's got past Tom Vanderbilt and has got up to 6th position. Also notice Gergo Boldi has lost 6 seconds on the previous lap. So there must have been a mistake there. That's put him right in front of the Rowland and Vanderbilt battle. And Mark Fuller has just crashed out in the ST as well. He was running second last, which was a shame for him. And both him and Mark Stanton significantly off the rest of the field's pace actually. So that's 1 down, so you won't have to deal so much with the lap traffic there. But a shame for ST to have their complete team eliminated before we've really begun.
Indeed, and that is just unfortunately part of it. You know, if you just make one mistake, and particularly actually around the Hungara ring, you know, it's known sort of as a almost street circuit just by it being so narrow. But also the walls, they are relatively close. If you do make a mistake, you are likely going to end up in a wall, as we've seen by a few drivers already. We're only on our 7th lap here, so at a very unforgiving track, you've got to keep it on the island.
There's Craven and Adam Rouse battle over 90. They were side by side a second ago, but they've just dropped one behind the other. One thing I would note as well is that the corner where you start off onto the final sector, where you run out right, it's a quite quick right-hander. It doesn't have a particular name, but I keep seeing drivers running all 4 wheels off the track, and having been someone that was penalised for that last year, that causes you as could end up docked penalties post-race. I wouldn't want to see some come down to that, but people need to be aware.
Absolutely. In fact, again, actually, in Formula Challenge, there are a few guys really pushing the limit, almost going into the wall on the outside now, just trying to carry all that momentum through. But yeah, you're risking it. And of course, you know, if you take liberties will be taken from you. But anyway, I'm actually keeping an eye on our fight here at the moment. For P11, which is Morten Wernersen. He's come under attack from Tommy Hagen. Hagen, he's been able to get that red Archer car right on the back of the oddball car here, and actually the red Archer looks pretty handy at the minute. Right on the backside of Wernersen as they go through 13 and 14 in a moment. Might be able to think about lining them up, perhaps. Ooh, wow, okay, a little squirm on power down there, evidently very, very keen to try and get alongside Wernersen. No, if he had been a little closer, definite overtaking potential down into turn 1 here, so keep an eye on that one. As actually it looks like our leaders as well, they're actually coming much closer together. Now we've got Tom Parker, he's just within 6 tenths of Lewis Redshaw, so we've got all sorts of, I wouldn't say condensation, but we've got
there might be some inside the visors, judging by the way they're going.
Yeah, but no, field getting much more closely packed as we're 10% through the race now, and my goodness, Harley was really close that time through turn 11 there on Redshaw, and he's having a look, having a quick peek, perhaps just making Lewis have to check his mirror, you know, to miss that braking spot by a few metres, just cause that little bit of space to put his Hawkeye into.
No, that was the leaders that was going on. If we ever get a chance to do a feature video, I'd love to see the move that Bart DeVos just pulled on Matt Richards. Round the outside for turn 1, they go side for side for turn 2, and he eventually gets him down at turn 3. It's a good long move there for 13th position. As this is the first time that Redshaw has felt the need to go defensive, and Hamlet's going to go more defensive on that. He's done that little peek out for the last couple of laps now, but now that Parker's onto the back, he can't afford to spend the lap losing time to get it back up again for a go. Because Parker's having a go, there's contact between the two. Parker muscles his way through. My goodness me, that was argy-bargy. How's your father? Look, Hamnet shaking his car around as if to say, is there damage? What have you done? And I think you might be a little bit aggrieved with that one because that was muscle power getting himself through. And I think Parker will take it any way he can. But dodgy
that was unfortunate. I mean, thankfully it was just wheel-on-wheel contact. You know, he didn't get any locking there where the front gets stuck ahead of the rear. But yeah, certainly not what you want at an early stage, especially when you're contending for a podium place. And evidently Harley, he just wants to make sure that his car is undamaged or as undamaged as possible. He's seen that Hawkeye is quick, so I'm sure perhaps just a moment. Okay, well, perhaps just let these two fight. Maybe there'll be an opportunity later. But yeah, this group really close. They're giving it everything, and yeah, just unfortunate. There's a little coming together there. Thankfully, they're both still running and seem to be undamaged.
Parker immediately on the attack for Redshaw as well. I don't see him hanging around. Redshaw goes defensive into the middle line. Parker, I think, will just say, I'll stay around the outside. Interestingly, they are kind of sister teams, the CSG and the Midnight Motorsports team. How will that concede with the battles for position as Parker's going for the inside for turn 2 again for the third time in a row. Redshaw runs wide through 2. That's going to give Parker a little nose through 3. He gives him plenty of room though, unlike his non-sister teammate Harley Hamnet in that Hawkeye. He's having half a look down into 4. That was never going to work. And this is going to be the battle of pushing pressure to and fro and basically offloading it onto someone else and seeing who can cope with it best as they go through the chicane.
Absolutely. Just you get into this situation here where all of a sudden, as the leader, Lewis will be under attack from Parker. But of course, you know, Parker and his efforts to attack will be running off the racing line, which of course leaves him exposed to Hamnet, which gives Lewis the opportunity to try and run away. Likewise, of course, Harley will be trying to attack Parker. He's going to have to watch Vidoc, who's slowly catching as well. So we've got a real tussle. 4 cars all on pace. I think Lewis just went a little bit wide through 11, or 13, sorry, beg your pardon, through there. And Parker, evidently, this sort of middle phase of phase 10th lap, you know, we're coming on 40% here. Clearly feeling racing. So we've got a good scrap for the lead between 4 cars. That's what I like to see.
I don't think it'll be long before the tyres start to roll right off the pace as well. They're about 7/10 off of what they have been doing before, but that could be more down to battling than anything else as Hamnet again runs wide. The issue that I have with the Parker and the Hamnet coming together is that, especially with the Hawkeye, that car was on such a knife edge of performance pressure that even the slightest piece of damage will cause an issue and change the way how that drives. And also, thinking on the Hungarian specifically, the way how the tyre compounds will start to wear because of how you're then having to drive as a result, as Junt takes Missilus for 9th position and Nico and the Red Archer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, these drivers...
Oh! Round the outside for turn 4, and Missilus is in the wall. Sorry, 10th position. He's upside down! Off across the track. Luckily his teammate's too far behind to catch him. He rolls back over the right way again. But Dennis Missilus, that was a trip that he had not planned to stick on his passport. And now he's back the right way and going again. But that Red Archer VRT has certainly seen some bruising.
Blimey. Well, if we were talking about, you know, just checking for damage, you want to make sure that your car's all right after flipping
that
it.
One, wouldn't you?
Yeah. He's giving it a little wobble and just a little feel around. Yeah, absolutely.
Quick work.
Yeah. So we joke, but you know, you want to make sure. I mean, we've got Bart de Vos now right up behind him. At this point in time, you know, just want to make sure your car's sorted. Of course, these drivers, you know, they'll be in their rhythm by this point in the race, and that I can guarantee will utterly ruin your rhythm. And it looks like Missilus is coming into pit, and if there's damage, I'm sure that'll be fixed in a moment.
Well, our first pit stop has been in, and that is Tom Vandervoort. Or is he? Oh no, he's missing a front wing. He's dropped it on the final corner, smacked and lost his front wing, and round he goes. Tumala to 7, Junt to 8, Vandervoort down to 9th, and he's got to do the entire lap now with no front wing. That could not have happened on a worse place for Tom Vandervoort.
Absolutely, and we saw this in races earlier in the week round here. Rear tyre wear in particular seems to be the one to watch for, and there could potentially be a puncture as well, so says our cameraman extraordinaire, so thank you for spotted that. But yeah, absolutely, and it's the worst place as well to happen, because you're now going to have to do a complete lap of the track with that damage, and it's not going to help you at all. But one thing I've just noticed actually is Harley Hamnet is back past Tom Parker and is now right up behind Lewis Redshaw. So we still have movement in this top 3 group. They are doing significantly slower times than they were a moment ago. I think it's going to be a case of who blinks first in pit stops, and that could dictate the rest of the race here.
Right, to go for the undercut if no one else is going for it, because they'll lose so much time whilst they battle each other. That could prove beneficial for yourself as...
Ooh. Was that attack? Was that just a bit of lag potentially? But blimey, Harley's really feeling racy now.
Looked like it was contact because he's dropped back ever so slightly. Parker's now right onto his rear. Missilis off your screens has pitted and rejoined in 20th position, so clearly his car is okay to go, and he's switched tyre compound as well. So Hamnet then in a proper sandwich between Lewis Redshaw ahead, Tom Parker behind, and Redshaw, despite all those lockups, is still maintaining a 100% leadership record of this Hungarian Grand Prix so far. That wily David Fidek, 4th position, sitting and watching all that goes on ahead of him. Not been off the podium yet, and I don't think he wants to end that anytime soon.
No, absolutely not. And actually, kind of thrillingly, actually, this is our closest battle on track right now, and it is excellent to see. You know, we've had some races in the Super League which have been fairly dictated early on, as in fact Redshaw, he's blinked, he's had enough, he wants some fresh boots, thank you very much, and he is in. So now the question will be, can Harley, Hamnet, Parker and Fidek, can they extend the tyre life at all and get a bit of a gap? What we've got to worry about now, or at least these drivers have got to worry about now, is those on the primes, because I'm sure they'll slot in behind those drivers. I'm just hearing that Lewis is going on to a set of prime tyres, but we've got to keep an eye we've got to keep an eye on those prime runners, because they will get out ahead and they will have, you know, those tyres up to temperature and everything else. And I think that's Tumala potentially just about to pass Redshaw. Yeah, as he exits the pit lane. So Lewis is out. He's got some fresh rubber. Can he get up to temperature and potentially pass some of these slower cars? Their tyres are feeling a little worse for wear.
If he wants to make the undercut work, he needs to clear Tumala, essentially. Absolutely. Because they're 20 seconds behind. He's got out ahead of the rest of them. Boldy has just taken Tommy Hagen out of the exit of turn 1 for 8th position, so he's actually got some clear air before he hits David Young. But Redshaw immediately onto the rear of Mikhail Tumala. Tumala doing a fantastic job in 5th position at green stripes, but they're simply not on the pace of the Hawkeyes, the Midnights and the CSGs. That's your Division 1 at the moment for for Super League. And Hamnet is in, he blinks this time around, and Parker and Fidek continue on.
Oh, in fact, Parker, I think that was a little bit of smoke coming off his rear tyres there on traction, so evidently they must be getting low. Interestingly though, Harley was able to pull out a half-second gap to Parker during that lap. And Harley, he's going on to primes, we've been told, so it's going to be a straight prime fight. The question now will be, where will he emerge? Will he be ahead of Redshaw, or will he be behind? It's going to be close. Redshaw's still behind Tumala, and I think Lewis, he's just about done enough. He's oh, they're free ride down into turn 1. Who's going to be last on the brakes? Oh, it's Redshaw just.
Oh, that was threading the eye of the needle, like he'd just been through a curry house. Ooh. And he's up into what is now 4th position. Hamnet then into 5th position. Tumala backed out of that down to 6th. The only prime person that's ahead of him, though, quite a way ahead, is Nick Rowland, and he's some 11 seconds up the road, so he will not affect where they come out. And the fact that they've cleared them all will now mean that it's between Parker and Fidek to get the tyres going and do their quick lap now if they're going to do anything. And Fidek's still on the back of Parker. Parker's not broken him yet.
No, and again, just little squirms from the back of this Midnight car. Perhaps the tyres have reached the end of their life, as Parker does indeed pit, and so does Fidek, in fact. So they've both gone at the same time. So I would suggest at this point that they will have done some slower times there, as the tyres, I don't think, as fresh. We'll have to see what tyres they go on to. So primes for Parker we hear, and I'm sure Roland, Roland does indeed go past. Perhaps Fidek will go on to primes as well. Yep, so everyone's gone on to primes we've heard. Thank you to cameraman extraordinaire for confirming that. So we now have another new leader. Nick Rowland leads by about 3 or so seconds.
Ooh, Parker may do it.
My goodness, I'm wow, astounded. Evidently that bit of traffic has cost Redshaw. Parker now, given that all the pit stops I'm sure will shake themselves out, will be our provisional leader. So a great bit of stint driving there for Parker. Just kept those tyres going. Good stuff, Tom. Good bit of strategy, and it's gifted him the provisional lead.
I think they're the big loser there, because he lost out not only to Parker overall, but to Fidek as well, who's widely got himself ahead, and nearly had his teammate too, as Tommy Hagen and David Young hit, and they rejoined just behind Petr Kaza, who is going the long way on the prime still. So Rowland leads the wave, 10 seconds clear of Tom Parker, although they are ripping in that lead quite quickly. Then it's Redshaw, Fidek, Hamnet, Tumala 6th, Boldy 7th has pitted, Bernardson 8th has pitted. has not pitted yet, sorry. Javos 9 has not pitted. Kazza is 10th, not pitted. Then Yunt, Hagen, Schroten, Covenant and Rouse is still not pitted in 15th, running your final points paying position. 23 still run, 21 on the lead lap.
Now, interesting thing has just crossed my mind. Now, we know that the CSG and Midnight teams, they are somewhat sisters. Nick Rowland, of course,
From other misters.
Indeed, well, indeed. Nick Rowland, he started the race on primes. So, first of all, for all the teams, they'll get a good idea of how far these prime tyres can go. But as these teams are all interlinked, of course, you know, we've got current Midnight 1, 2. There's going to be some valuable information being shared between the drivers right now. I'm sure as Parker, he just locks up there and runs a little bit wide down into 2, but he's just about covered that one. Yeah, there's going to be some valuable information being shared about these tyres, when to push, when to conserve. And yeah, this is going to be quite beneficial for these two teams. They've already been dominant this year, and as things stand, they're going to have a good run here. But we'll have to keep an eye on that Hawkeye of Harley Hamnet. He's proved very handy so far, and I'm sure he's not going to go away anytime soon.
David Yunt takes Kazza for 9th and 10th positions as who is that into the pit? That was Roy Schroten along with Tommy Hagen. So they all rejoin. Sorry, Bart DeVos that was. Sorry, rejoining. DeVos rejoins in 15th. Just over Tom Jacobs yet to pit. Still continuing the lead battle. Lead battle as they continue on. And Kazza retakes Hagen, who does a faux move for 10th. Mark Stanton pits.
Just going to keep an eye on the gap between Redshaw and Parker. Redshaw, he put the car in the wing mirrors of Parker a few times, just as he has just done now. You know, I'm here, you know, just keep an eye on where I'm putting my car. But actually, the gap has actually stayed relatively speaking the same. So a bit of mind games perhaps, but the gap between Parker and Rowland still remains about 10. Actually, it's gone up to almost 11 seconds. So we've got to keep an eye on how this one progresses. We've got some traffic ahead. We've got, I think that's Van der Voort, to pass. Of course, all these 4 cars, they want to get by as quickly as possible to try and extend the advantage they've got over the rest of the field.
Branson in from position in the Vodball. He'll drop behind several of the team that have yet to pit their drivers. And yeah, Van der Voort, I think, will get out of the way quite nicely. Branson rejoins in top position, just Adam Rouse, but overall that means that he's gained time over Bart DeVos in the battle between lower points in the top 10 positions. So that keeps him nice and safe, and Van der Voort getting well out of the way there. He'll just be point by the end of this race.
Meanwhile, we have Rowland. He's just crossing start finish to complete his 18th lap onto lap 19. Just keep an eye on the gap. Actually, this might be quite beneficial to run quite deep into the race. We're quarter distance, roughly speaking. Now the gap has gone down actually just by a little bit to 10.6 from almost 11 seconds. So about a 3/10 gain there. But if he can run these tyres well into the race, first of all, it's going to really hearten the guys behind on the primes. But also, it might shake things up. You know, if you're able to run really deep, you might be able to get away with perhaps a 2-stop. We think 1 is going to be out of the question just on the wear rates around this track. But no, if he can carry on just doing the good, consistent lap times that he's been doing so far, he's going to have a strong finish. Who knows, he might actually play himself into our leading group of 4 at the moment. So, one to keep an eye on as we progress, as these alternating strategies play out.
The lap times of Nick Rowland, his fastest lap he'd done on lap 12, but actually he's got more consistent over the last 5 or 6 laps compared to what he was earlier on in his stint, and they're towards the faster end of his lap times in general. So Rowland clearly showing that even if the tyre wear is coming in or the tyres are diminishing, after 18 laps they are still holding up nice enough to be fast enough. And as you say, giving valuable information to everyone else out there at the same time. And a few of the other cars haven't quite gone nearly as far or dared to go as far on the primes, so compared to Rowland. So he's really flying the flag for tyre conservation as well as keeping the...
Yeah, he is indeed. He's doing a great job. And of course, when you're racing out on your own in particular, you know, all you've got to worry about is lap traffic. You know, keeping yourself on the knife edge on that limit can be pretty tricky, but he's doing a great job. But actually, just to cast the eye down towards the midfield a bit, Tommy Hagen, he has got past Morten Wernerson. He did that a little while ago. He's now almost caught up to David Yunt, who's running on both of them on options. I don't know if either of these guys have pitted. So these guys, no, in fact they haven't. So running these options well into the race. Clearly they've got either a long-run strategy planned out, or they've just found a nice way to keep these tyres fresh. So keep an eye on Hagen. He's definitely motivated, making his way through the field, which is good to see. That red Archer seems to be pretty handy around here.
Copeland pits from 12, drops him out of the points, as does Tom Jacobs, making his first stop after his pit lane shenanigans. Just watching a replay I did of the start of what happened to Tom Jacobs and why he done it. He seemed to rest his car and just leave it going to the right, and then when he was on the accelerator to just warm up his tyres again, he'd actually got his right wheels on the grass and it just pitched him off into a spin into the barrier. So a real rookie error there from Mr. Jacobs. I'm sure he'll be embarrassed with that, but he's certainly turning in decent lap times and may be able to do something later on in the race. Roy Schroten dives well out of the way from the leading quartet, and that's going to allow Hamnet to have a good go at Viaduct down into turn 2. Ooh, he gives him a little love nudge in the rear for the battle for 4th and 5th positions, but no harm done there. But Hamnet will not want to make that Hawkeye a battering ram, because that will only diminish performance. Absolutely,
and the other thing to bear in mind, of course, is if you're really tucked up behind another car, I think that was actually the lap traffic was running a bit wide over some of the sausage anti-cuts on the outside.
Fancy sausage.
But no, if you're stuck behind a car for a significant amount of time, of course, that's going to be wearing your tyres out faster than the guy ahead of you in free air. So Harley, he's going to have to be careful here. It might actually be beneficial to let the CSGF find up, run a bit ahead, stay in clean air, try and preserve those tyres for later on. Oh! Yeah, we just saw on camera there, it looks like there was a little touch between Redshaw and Parker. Evidently Redshaw, he wants to get on with it and try and chase down Parker's teammate Roland in the other Simcraft car. Little love nudge. I think Mercy's been putting his car in the mirror. Perhaps wants to put a bit more alongside it now. Have a look. He has another little look, but he's nowhere near close enough to make a move in the turn one that time. But it is
hits as well, so this is now the lead.
So yeah, it's actually quite interesting. Just
massive contact, 5th position. Roland bins it into the first corner, takes Boldy with him, and both have got front wings. Sorry to cut across you there, but I could just see him coming out. And I thought, he's going to get Boldy, and then he just plows into him down turn 1. Bizarre incident.
Yeah, absolutely. Just watch that back on replay quickly. Yeah, it looks like he just realised that Boldy was there. Went, oh, blimey, I better put my foot down.
Yeah.
And that actually caused more problems for him. But, that's not ideal. That's certainly going to have potentially damaged the car, in fact, both cars. That's certainly going to make it a pretty hard old job to try and catch the leaders. Having said this, though, both are only around 15 seconds away from the leading pack. So they could perhaps be thinking about the long game as Redshaw just looking ever closer to Parker. So perhaps those mind games might be playing off. Who knows?
No problems. Off your screens, Bart DeVos has finally got round Mindergaus Columbus after them going too wide for 3 corners in a row and swapping positions, and he's got there. We saw Roy Schroten spinning off in the background. He did actually lose his front wing. He's come into the pits and rejoined in last position as Adam Rouse rejoins from his stops right into the path of the leading quartet. That does well to avoid any carnage down into turn 1. So we now know that is definitely a touch point of issue for the future.
Absolutely, we'll have to keep a good eye on that. But of course, nature of the pit lane, you need to feed in somewhere, and it's just unfortunate that you've got a very long straight going into quite a slow corner, and if you are just that little bit unsighted, you can just get a little tag, and well, that could potentially do some fairly serious damage. So thankfully, everyone seems to be carrying on, despite the fact it looked like a pretty heavy hit. I'm sure those cars are going to have a little bit of damage, which the driver's going to have to keep an eye on. And as you were saying quite rightly earlier, if you just change the dynamics of the car a bit, completely throw your wear rates off from what you've practiced, and it can completely change up your strategy.
Hazard in from 10th position, one of the final people to make his first stop of the evening. The only people on option tyres then, David Junt in 8th, Tommy Hagen in 9th, Morten Vernonson in 10th, and Menno Klont down in 15th position. Everyone else currently on the prime tyres, the tyre of choice it seems, and that's what's allowing some of these battles that are going on kind of down towards the end of the top 10 to take place and really pull themselves out. As Columbus pits from 15th, he's I think our last one to go for. So we'll see at that as Viaduct defends 3rd position from Harley Hamnet down into 1. Is he going to get the undercut
I
for
think
2?
He
yes,
is.
He is.
Blimey, that was proper foot down. Let's get a move on. I think just made Viaduct. He had to break just a little later. Just took him offline, and Harley went, right, thank you very much. And I'll put my power down as normal and slingshot by. So a nicely executed move as I was saying earlier, got the move done and then got the defending done, more importantly, in turn 2. So that's a good position earned. We saw Harley pulled a nice little gap when the pit stops were happening. Can he catch up now to Redshaw? Got a 1.5 second gap to remain, well, reel in.
Time will tell. Hagen nearly into the back of Yunt for 8th and 9th position. This is Hagen's strongest run so far in 2014 by far. Showing Red Archer's form there. We also had a great scrap going on for 18th with Tom Vandervoort and Tom Jacobs both recovering, but Vandervoort has now passed Jacobs for that position. So go to 18 and Nordjane down to 19th place. They're about to get all over Tommy Kovenen, and I think Vandervoort's actually going to go straight for it. Kovenen goes defensive down into the final turn, and far too much so, and Vandervoort's going to get so much traction out of it. Kovenen dives through on the inside, and I think Vandervoort will say, I'll have to switch a route back through, but he's not got quite the power on the exit. Now follow through into the final corner, and then that will become a done deal. They need to be careful because they've got Nick Rowland that they're having to let through, and that can always be an issue. Here comes Vandervoort himself, down up for 17th. Kovenen gives him all the room, and a little bit of curve on the exit, and nearly bins it off. I saw Ben Willis do that actually in the Formula Challenge race right in front of me. You go for that defensive move, and it actually spits you off. That's a curb to avoid.
Yeah, and actually there are some, as you mentioned, curbs to avoid. Actually, quite a few of them. They look pretty low, but actually they slowly rise as the corner progresses. And actually, there are a few cars just right on those curves, and the suspension evidently set up to deal with that. There's proper killer curves. If you hit them, you're going to have issues. But as I've just been watching, actually, Redshaw for me, he doesn't seem to have an answer at the minute for Parker. He hasn't been able to actually get alongside fast. I'd say we've had some lap traffic to deal with at the moment. They're just about to try and get by Petter Kassa. But Parker, he's been covering everything that Redshaw throws at him. In fact, actually, Parker's got a really good exit. Got round Kassa, around the final curve, and I think perhaps caught Redshaw a little bit napping. He has gone by now. So plenty to watch. And actually, Harley Hamlet, he's reeled the gap in. It's now at only 6:10, so he's pulled in a lot of time. In fact, set the fastest lap of the race for the last lap.
Sorry about that noise. I felt as soon as I went, all like interested, I thought, oh no, I've done a Yoda. Reeled him in, he has. So yeah, let's not do those voice actings on the airs. But yeah, Hamlet clearly showing the pace. Well, we know the pace isn't at Hawkeye today anyway, but once again showing that. Jumped onto he's now got Hagen right into the back of him, so watching that one as well in the back of my eye. As Kovenen has dropped behind Jacobs as well as Vandervoort now, so that all those battles sorted out for 17-18 time being. But definitely the firm action up front for the top 4 positions, and then for 8th and 9th in general.
Just keeping an eye on Harley. He's not really attacking in the middle sector, which is understandable. There's not really a way past, but through this first and last sector, he's really on it. And Redshaw there, clearly feeling the need to carry as much speed as possible into this last sector. He went well right through 11, just about kept all 4 on track. There's plenty of dust kicked up in the air as they cross, and Harley, he's got that gap down to 4/10 now between him and Redshaw. This is going to again turn into an interesting dynamic sort of 3-way fight of course, Tom, he's going to be keeping an eye on Lewis, making sure that he doesn't send a move which he doesn't expect. Now Lewis has got to keep an eye on Harley. Harley evidently really on it with this car, really working well together in perfect harmony, and he's just reeled in that gap in no time at all. So I reckon if Harley can get by, he will be putting significant distance between himself and the cars around him. So this is going to be fascinating. Keep an eye on the up-and-coming laps.
Again on pace, Fidek not quite able to match them. Once they start battling again, he'll be able to catch up because they lose pace. But essentially the fact that they are battling is what has kept David Fidek in this fight.
Absolutely, but of course, you never know with these things. If everyone's charging and giving 110%, just that one moment means, okay, you may be a few seconds back, off the leading trio, but you never know, that might be a podium position all of a sudden. We know, of course, Fidek, he's had a great run, in fact, perfect run of podium positions so far, and I wouldn't put it past him for him to stop here. So, you never know, there might be some strategy going on, perhaps preserving an engine or saving some fuel so he can go on to full engine mode later on, who knows. But yeah, at the moment, certainly, he seems to be relying almost on the fighting to be happening to cause him to be able to catch back up. As in fact, last time around, Harley, he lost a little bit there to Redshaw, and Park actually gained a bit from Lewis as well. So Gap's extending as Lewis will big lock up down into turn 2, but I doubt Harley will be able to do anything with that at the moment.
The lap 28 then that we are currently coming to round to complete as we watch the leading trio battle away. It's Tom Parker leading on his first race for 2014 in the Midnight Motorsports from Lewis Redshaw. Third is Harley Hamnet. Fourth is David Fiduk just behind these. Gergo Bolges in fifth for Hawkeye after his little coming together with Nick Rowland, and Rowland's dropped 4.5 seconds back behind him again, so that'll be interesting. Of course, he's got leaving his options stint until the very end of the race, I would assume. Tumala is 7th ahead of David Young 8. Tommy Hagen is 9. Moulton Vernonson is in 10th ahead of Vernonson is in 10th ahead of Bart de Vos. And Hamnet has lost out.
He has indeed. Cameron Extraordinaire spotted that. I was watching it as well. Just a little mistake down into turn 13, our penultimate corner, and he's lost a bucket of time. He's lost, over a second to Redshaw. So Lewis, he's going to be pleased with that. Harley evidently pushing the car to the limit. It's a small mistake. There's a second worth of work. I wouldn't put it past Harley though. I'm sure he'll reel that time back in as he's reeled it in before. But a little moment there has cost him a significant amount of time.
Call him the hairy fisherman. Reeling them in again. Just continue to run down of the order just so that everyone knows where their favourite drivers are around half distance, or coming up to it anyway. So De Vos is 11 ahead of Missilis 12 for Red Archer, really for the first time this year, being shown round by Tommy Hagen. Casa is in 13th, nearly being clouted by Bolgi as he gets lapped round him in 14th. Clont is right behind him in 14th position actually for the Kerno, good scrap there. Then it's Tom Vandervalt's in 15th, just passing Mindergaus Columbus down to 16th place. Rouse is in 17th for Torrent, Jacobs 18 for Nordzone, 19 is Covenant, 20th Kieran Ryan, 21st Matt Richards, and Mark Stanton, the final runner and rider, in 22nd for Target. Your three retirements were Hulkenin, Fuller and Schroten, all of them crashing out with Boyd Bryson failing to take the start.
They're just keeping an eye on the fight here for the lead between Parker and Redshaw. Just watching the first and second sector times come into this lap, and they're nigh on identical, absolutely almost down to the 1,000. So we'll see as they cross the line exactly what third sector they've been able to do. But again, it looks like Parker's really got this car working well for him, and he's certainly doing well. In fact, actually in the last sector, Parker was actually a 10th quicker than Redshaw behind him. And again, Redshaw is locking up that, I think, just inside left wheel into that left-hand corner, perhaps unloaded, just a little bit too much brake pressure. But Parker, he's got to be feeling pretty confident. Lewis has got nothing for him at the moment, so as long as he keeps it on the straight and narrow, I'm sure he'll be able to get a very, very good finish. Ooh, as I say that, almost curves the commentator. A little bit too much power down on the exit of turn 5 there, but he gathered that one in. So fascinating duel here. Looks like we've got two very, exactly almost identical cars with equal lap times. It is going to be a true test of the driver who can get the car to the finish line first.
David Yunt pits from what was 8th position. That releases Tommy Hagen up into said position. And David again goes to the option tyres, and that's a really unusual strategy compared to what everyone else is doing. So see how that one works out, because that's going to be meaning multiple more stops than everyone else. So I think he's gone on maybe for a loser there. He needs to ensure that kind of keep up with that whole I will do quali laps after quali laps all the way through. So good luck to David for that one, and we'll keep a VDI.
Absolutely, and as you say, the only way you can really make a strategy where you're going into that option tower repeatedly, of course. Ooh.
Sorry, Tom Vanderbilt being at the start of Sector 3 down in what was 15th position, it's now 17th, and he's got back going again just ahead of the Jacobs and Covenant scrap, and Tom Vanderbilt clearly not wanting points today.
Oh, that's unfortunate, but good spot. Good spot there, Simon. So I was just about to say, we're going to have to keep an eye actually on Parker. Just again, on exit from turn 1 there, car really starting to step out. So perhaps the rears are starting to go. Unfortunately, off the top of my head, I can't exactly remember when these guys pitted in from their options to their primes. But evidently the tyres, they might start to be feeling a little old, which is surprising because obviously Nick Rowland, he went well into the race on his primes from the start. So
they pitted on lap 16. So this is exactly when they pitted as they crossed the line this time round. They will have equalled the same amount of racing laps, essentially, as we kickstart lap 32. So this will really show the difference between how far they could go prime versus option as they pop a lap on David Young.
Indeed they do, and actually I hadn't realised actually Tom, he had a really good lap there. He's got the gap up between himself and Redshaw to over a second. So,
they left Hagen, that's why.
Okay, so there's other traffic as well to keep an eye on, but evidently perhaps there's still a bit of traffic in the right places for Tom. He's been able to extend that gap really nicely, and of course you don't have to start worrying about cars being in your mirror all the time, and you can just focus on putting those sectors together and trying to extend your lead. So at this point, now we're coming up to halfway. We've got obviously the tyres. I believe Roland did around 20 or so, perhaps a little bit more laps. So perhaps in 5 or so laps time, we might see these guys diving in for a fresh set of tyres. And really, the question would be then, what do they go for? Do they go for another set of prime, or do they try and do a quick stint on the option?
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw uniformity, because when you're up front and you're splitting strategies, you're effectively deciding one of your cars will lose to the other. And I know that CSG have done this before, so they are guaranteeing that one will do better than the other. As Redshaw's in from what was second position, now already down to third. There's what he goes for.
Yeah, we're just hearing that Harley had a moment, perhaps almost not expecting Lewis to pit there, perhaps, but evidently he's decided to blink. Perhaps he's had enough being in behind cars' rear wings, and if you can get a fresh set of tyres and find yourself a nice bit of clear track, you might be able to get that undercut again. But Lewis, he was one of the first to go in last time. He's one of the first here.
Times again.
Yeah, it could be perhaps a sign that he's perhaps using the tyres a bit more around here. So that might be not a good thing to have. But if he gets some clear out and some good lap time in now, though, he'll be able to perhaps reel Parker in a bit. And actually, it looks like he has been able to rejoin. And he's got a little bit of clear out, perhaps not as much as you'd perhaps like, but he is, more importantly, out ahead of Roland. So he's been able to hold on to a top 4 spot.
Bridshaw's saving grace there was that Boldy followed him into the pits, because actually there was only 3 seconds between him and Boldy. He may have pulled away from Roland, but he would have caught onto the back of Gergo instead, and then been like, well, what do I do with this now? So at least he's now got proper clear air. That was Stanton ahead, who had just pitted as well. Someone else popping into the pits as Parker goes around and pops a lap on Bernson. That's Matt Richards, who's doing a decent enough job, and the trio continue on again. Viaduct now 4.5 off the back of Tom Parker, so he's going to have to do mighty laps if he wants to do something with that.
Yeah, indeed. Now, I think the car we have to watch is Harley Hamnet. He's just set the fastest lap of the race, so evidently his car is preserving his tyres rather nicely, so he's now got a 2-second gap to run into. We saw how quickly he was able to do that earlier to catch the back of Redshaw. He's only got 1 bit of lap traffic between him and the leader, so I would keep an eye on Harley. We know, as we've said repeatedly, and with good reason, that car, that Hawkeye, is really working well here today. And I'm sure he might be able to do a good little jump over here. And if he can get the timing right, make these tyres last long, he might be able to, get that win in the back. Who knows? He's just about to get by Wernerson through the second sector here. Good bit of Wernerson to let him by. So Harley now has free air all the way to the back of Tom Parker, and the gap was 2.8, and it looks like it remains 2.8 seconds. So we'll have to keep an eye on this one. Can Harley bring in that gap?
Pitters in this time round, Mano Klont, who rejoins in 17th position. Missalus also pitted from
we've
13th.
got pitting. Yeah, we've got pitting action. We've got Harley pitting in. We've got Parker pitting in. So and we've got, I believe, Viaduct. Where's Viaduct? No, he's carried on. So Viaduct will be inheriting the race lead. These two pit in. We'll keep an eye on what they switch onto. Redshaw went on to primes. And by the looks of it, everyone is staying on primes. And actually, crucially, we had a bit of traffic in the pit lane there. That might have a factor. Looks like the boss pitting in.
They are going to absolutely claw past Redshaw. Redshaw's had a terrible outlap. And look at that, Parker swimming into the lead. Redshaw, and I think Harley Hamnet, it looked to me that he shot over his pit box. For me. I'm not sure if I can confirm that, but it looked really juddery when he stopped, and then it kind of moved about a bit for me. So he's lost a ton of time, and he's actually out behind Nick Rowland, so he's going to have to deal with that because Rowland's on a completely different setup of strategy. The Parker way clear from Redshaw, who's way clear from Rowland, and now suddenly David Viaduct, if he keeps this clean, could well end up in second position due to those poor pit stops. And I wonder if they had not switched off damage as well, because it was Redshaw, wasn't it, that oh no, it was Parker, sorry, that Hamnet hit So.
Yes, yeah, early on. So it might be a case of, let's see if we can sort out that suspension or realign that toe or camber. But yeah, that's absolutely fallen right into the lap of Parker. I mean, he'll be on fresher tyres than Lewis, and as this lap has gone so far, he's actually extended the gap as well. So really, we do have to keep an eye on now Firedock, the dynamic of the race as we are going on to half distance on this lap, literally has changed completely. So Firedock, if he can keep it cool and consistent, he should be able to get a long way into this race. He doesn't have any traffic around him in the immediate vicinity. We'll have to see if he's able to put in those good, consistent laps. We saw this at Silverstone when he was in Free He put in some great laps, was able to reel in a bit. Marky had a little lock up down into turn 2, but was able to hold on. But no, Firedock, he's proven to be able to put in those really quick, consistent laps in free air. If he can do that now, he's certainly going to claw his way onto that podium once again.
15.2, sorry, clear from Parker. Then Redshaw a further 5 seconds back. And he's got Nick Rowland, who is still shadowing him pretty much nose to tail. So that's a real judge, actually, of pace to where they are up to, because Rowland obviously on worn primes, but he was able to keep up that pace all the way to the pit stop. Clearly, Redshaw not quite up to the same speed that he was at before.
As Firedock pits, sorry to talk over you, but Firedock is now pitting on this lap, so evidently he just wanted to go a few laps further. I didn't quite catch what the pit lane times were, but if Harley had a bad one at 14 seconds, I'm sure if he gets his cards right, Firedock might be able to get out just about ahead of Parker. To be able to hold him behind is another question. In fact, no, ignore me completely and utterly. It was an 8.9 second stop, but he's lost the lead. Parker into the lead, and Redshaw has passed his teammate. And Rowland, he wants a piece of that, but unfortunately for him, Firedock's just about done enough through turn 1 to hold on to 3rd place. And he's nice and late on the brakes, just about getting it stopped for turn 2. So now we've got a Simcraft 1-4 and CSG 2-3. So a sandwich has been resumed. CSG's in the middle now.
Like a club sandwich, but the issue for that one is now what can Hamnet do in order to reel that back in, and will that then ruin his strategy further on down the road as Tumala pits from 7th position. And I forgot what I was actually going to say, that someone had spun, but they rejoined anyway, as Stanton is also in from last position.
Well, just keeping an eye actually on the lap times. I mean, Harley, he's shown in some free air, he's been able to bring gaps in quite easily. And looking at the last laps, actually, it was pretty comparable to everyone just about ahead of him. So that won't do anything for him. But if he can do that consistently, moreover, if these guys start fighting again, then we might be able to get a nice little scrap here as he catches back up, which I'm sure he will. He's clearly got the pace.
Well, Rowland's still giving Firedock a little bit of jip for 3rd and 4th position, so even though he's on a slightly different rollout of stuff, and the interesting thing for Rowland will be is how he deals with the option tyres when he switches to them. It looks like everyone's going to be making the same amount of stops, they're just doing them in slightly different times, so Nick Rowland could well play himself into this race at some point later on down the line if that option tyre is significantly faster enough on pace as they pop a lap on Firedock. No, they don't.
No,
they pass him.
Pass him. That was most unusual. Firedock almost pulled aside to let him by. So I don't know if that was... Well, it couldn't have been team orders across team, but you never know. That was most unusual. But, well, Rowland's benefited. He's up into P3. And as you were saying earlier, potentially when you do split strategies across teams, it is normally a case of one driver is going to benefit, the other driver is going to suffer. But playing your cards right, if you have drivers fighting and everything else, that might just pull the strategy back so it's more of an even playing field. We're halfway through, as you rightly say, we've had drivers pitting at all various different points, and likely they'll all do roughly the same number of stops, if you exclude damage. But no, this is quite fascinating just to see that, because surely Rowland, if he's got a little bit of a rhythm going, he might be able to latch onto the back of Redshaw and drag himself even further into contention. So I have to keep an eye on this. And that was actually a good point just made by cameraman extraordinaire as we just watching the fight continue here. Perhaps it was just a case of actually Firedock, he's thinking long game here. He wants to preserve his tyres rather than fight. Let him go by, try and wear his tyres out, perhaps trying to catch his teammate, and then just pass him later on anyway. So who knows what's going on? There's all sorts of chess being played here at well over 180 kilometers an hour. As our leaders circulate, Parker is still in the lead, but the gap's actually come down critically by almost half a second now to 4.6. So if Redshaw can keep it up, I'll just have a look at lap times last time around. Indeed, actually, Redshaw was 0.3 faster last time around. If you can do that consistently, that gap's going to come down in no time at all. Harley's actually been able to take a bit out of the leaders as well. So all to play for. Really can't actually start to settle in. This could go any way of, well, 5 directions.
Never dismiss the list. Overtook Petikaza for 12th position. Off your screens whilst they're going around the old lapped traffic of Tommy Hagen, who is in 9th. Pretty amazing actually that it shows actually the dominance of the Division 1 type cars that already all the way up to 9th is lapped, and we're only on lap 40 of 70 as they continue their squabbleroos. And Lewis Redshaw does enjoy a little bit of locking up of his brakes around turns 1 and 2. And turn 2, I've yet to see Redshaw really get turn 2 hooked up properly, and it was where he was vulnerable for Parker earlier on, and Hamnet had a little stab. I'm wondering if Roland's taken note of that and might be thinking a similar thing if he can get close enough.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, first of all, as you rightly say, clearly dominant group of leading cars here, but no, it's going to be interesting just to see how these cars try and play it out. I mean, so we've seen Park, he's perhaps been given the hurry up from the people on the pit wall to try and get honours. Oh, Stanton! Just keep an eye on Parker. Stanton had a moment, kind of got himself out of the way, thankfully, but God, that's not what you want to see when you're trying to lap traffic. And in fact, the gap's come down again. It's now 4.3 between himself and Redshaw, but no, even though all these cars are very similar and they're all running vaguely similar strategies, it's going to be fascinating just to see how it all plays out. And even though we've got a lot of cars perhaps not as on the same blistering pace as our leaders, they still play a factor, of course. They're having their own fights. They're, of course, scoring points for their respective teams. But it's all going to be about, I think, how the drivers navigate perhaps the lap traffic. We saw that Parker was able to perhaps gain a little advantage just before that second round of stops. And really, it is a case of the truly great drivers. They can, first of all, drive the car and drive at 110%, but they can also realise where there is opportunity and well and truly take advantage of it.
Harley Hamnet just 2.1 seconds now behind David Fidek. He's reeling him in, the fisherman out there from Oz. Reeling him in just while we've got a small pause in the battle for the lead, or as much of a pause as we've got because Yunt is in between Roger and Roland. Run through of the order on lap 41 of 70. It's Parker leading then, Tom Parker for Midnight Motorsport ahead of Lewis Redshaw in a CSG. Roland third for Midnight, yet to make his second stop. And so he's slightly out of sync at the moment, but it'll all come together later. Then fourth position is David Fidek ahead of the Hawkeyes of Harley Hamnet and Gergo Boldy. Again, starting so well, but they are slightly out of position compared to where maybe their overall prime pace could be. Seventh is Mikhail Tumala doing a great job for Green Stripes ahead of David Young in 8th for Nijo. 9th, Tommy Hagen, Redshaw. I wanted to say Red Archer, but it's Redshaw, sorry. You've now got a team, Lewis. 10th is Morten Bernenson, just ahead of his teammate Bart de Vos in the Bold Balls. Then it's Visser in the Red Archer in 12th. Torrens, shout out to them. They're on prime primes, but Petikaza and Adam Rouse are both in the point for Torrent in what is a dog of a car. Mello Klontz in 15th for Kerno, ahead of Tom Jacobs 16th for Nordzone. 17th for Tom Vandervoort. Mindergaus Columbus was in the points, but has slipped out for Target, but they could desperately do with some points, and some finishes actually for Target. So Mindergaus is doing a great job for that team. Coven 19th for Green Stripes, quite delivering on potential again. Whereas 2 laps down is Kieran Ryan for Phoenix, Matt Richards for Kerno, and 3 down is Mark Stanton, the final runner in 20.
A good actually point there to make actually is Tom Jacobs. He's up to P16 from obviously that odd moment on the formation. He had to start in the pit lane, which means obviously don't get released until all the cars have passed the end of sector 1. Good recovery drive to get all the way up to 16th. We've still got a long way to go in this race. You never know, we might be able to steal a point or two here. So we'll keep an eye on that as things progress. Obviously got this fierce fight between our leaders. The gap now down to 4 seconds between Redshaw and Parker. But we've got plenty of action to keep an eye on in the midfield as well.
Roland Dim.
Indeed,
was full.
I was just about to say, actually, it's been about 20 or so laps. He might have been
primes again.
Well, going for primes. He's doing a triple prime stint, so that should take him to lap 60 or so, I'd assume. And then, well, 10 lap flyer on those options. Might be able to reel in a few drivers. But Harley's obviously benefited there. He's got through into 4th place, and so is Harley's teammate, Giorgio Baldi, second Hawkeye car. But the gap, just about 2 seconds between Hamnet and Viaduct. We'll have to see once Harley clears some traffic between himself and Viaduct, if he can get by and start to wheel in Redshaw again.
Interestingly, he's lost a lot of time around Kieran Ryan. I was going to say, because the gap between 1st and 5th had come down to 8.5 seconds, now already up to over 9.5 again. So Hamnet is actually closing down all of the cars in front of him, not just Viaduct as well. And I think that's quite significant to show that yes, he still has that pace and is still a threat to everyone, as Adam Rouse pits from what was think now promotes Jacobs into that final points pay. Time being, a lot to be shaken out towards the back end of that field. Mark Stanton in for the 2nd lap in a row for a pit stop, so not quite sure what he's up to, but clearly either a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pits, or he's done a little bit of damage on his outlet.
They're just keeping an eye on our leading group here. Harley hasn't been able to take too much time out of Viaduct, and interestingly, Parker extended the gap last time round, just by a few tenths. All critical time, the drivers will be keeping an eye on their deltas, on their steering wheels, as they are running around this 4.3 kilometre track. And never know, just a little, perhaps, gap increase not in your favour, and it could just unsettle you just a bit. So still, this fight is really going hard and strong between Redshaw and Parker. So all to play for, and we're not even through the thirds. Ooh!
But DeVos in the barriers down at turn 1 all by himself. Bizarre incident. Let me just take a quick old replay-a-roo on that. In 11th place as he comes down. Oh, he's kind of veered to the left grass area under braking and then broke afterwards and just went spearing off into the inside barrier. Bizarre there for the VOD ball driver. They were on for some serious points, but it looks as though that car, amazingly, has all wings intact, and I've got no idea how.
They build them strong at Vodball, that's for sure, and I think they'll be glad that they do. Yeah, blimey, yeah, fairly hefty old hit. Amazingly, the car still looks in pretty good nick. Never know, there might be the odd bit of suspension damage here or there, but to be honest, I think you'd be quite happy to get away with that one.
Definitely. Surprisingly as well, just to point out, we've only got 3 drivers on option tyres, and they are Matt Richards, Menno Klont, both Kernos essentially, and the Nijo of David Yunt, who is now doing the 3rd run through of options as Vandervoort takes Tom Jacobs 15th and 16th places. Mark Stanton pulled into the pit lane and retired his car. Actually, he wasn't coming in for another drive through, just parked it.
Yeah, we did see him have a moment a little while ago in front of Parker, so it might have been a bit of damage or something perhaps a bit more serious. And of course, you know, when you've got to conserve engines and consider fuel and the damage to repair these things, you know, you never know. It could be a case of just trying to save a bit of money, who knows, and the car for a later race. Anyway, just heard from cameraman extraordinaire that Hamlet has been on the march. In fact, yes, he has. He's got that gap down to just 8 tenths now. It was quite a bit more than that. And he's almost right up on the gearbox as they go through turns at 12 and 13 on lap 45 of 70. They've got Adam Rouse ahead. I'm sure he will do the right thing and move aside to let these battling pair get through. This gap coming down all the time, and again, Harley's showing that that car is mighty fast, and it's certainly going to be a force to be reckoned with, not only in this race, but for the rest of the season.
And that's interesting in itself, actually. As Viaduct and Hamnet pop a lap on Adam Rouse, who's got out of the way for one. Is he going to get right out of the way for the other? No, he's not. Ooh. Oh dear. That was a little bit of a bad judgment from the old Rousey-Roo. But he gets out of the way for the leaders now. That if Hawkeye start to have that car up to a pace that it clearly is now, and that is constant throughout the rest of the season, that now adds in a fresh new element of consistency throughout the rest of the year, that the CSGs themselves, they're going for the championship. Parker and Cooper will be switching teams seats constantly, so they're not in it for the drivers. But they now have a new person that can get in between the CSGs. At the beginning of the season, it was very much stay on a 1-2 as I decided to throw my mouse across the room. And now all of a sudden it's going to be 1 and 3s and 1 and 4s potentially. And that now makes every single position count even more, because there could be more of a gap and more of a point spread per race going forward. So it's just an extra element that those CSG boys have to deal with.
Exactly, and it's just it then, you know, just that little bit of unpredictability. Well, I think the only predictable thing is this Hawkeye is going to be mighty quick, but you never quite know exactly what the order's going to be. And as you rightly say, as the season progresses, if the car is there, and I'm sure it will be, the CSG boys, they've got to keep an eye out. And admittedly, they've got a great lead both as far as the drivers go. In fact, there's 1 point between both of their drivers. But that constructors lead is a nice solid margin to the Midnight guys, over 100 and almost 150 points. It's going to be a challenge to be able to make too much over the inroads, I think, with the constructors, but you never know with the drivers. Harley's been hugely unlucky at the start of the season. Perhaps now he's got machinery under him, he might be able to make a real impact as we progress through to our final third of the season.
An impact into a barrier, hopefully. I'll tell you what, you were saying earlier on about people overtaking around the outside and in surprising places. Meadow Clont overtook Petikaza around the outside in the right-hand flick for the end of Sector 1, Turn 4, and that was quite an impressive one, which was why you might have heard me going hoo-hoo very quietly in the background. So I was like, oh, cheeky devils, but it worked for him as Tom Jacobs in the pits from 16th place. That takes him slightly out of the points position as Missilus nearly bins it in the tight chicane.
I just wonder, actually, just looking at the number of laps remaining for our drivers, if he was perhaps feeling a little bit like it, he might be able to just about reach the end of the race on some primes. What state the primes will be in the end, we don't know. We have to see what he's come back out onto track on. In fact, he is indeed on the prime, so he could potentially just about make it, or he might just do a quick stint, get those options on for a last little blast. Just keeping an eye, though, on Tom Parker. The gap is still around 4 seconds, actually, now, between himself and Redshaw, but Parker's making his way through traffic, and in this second sector where he currently is, it's very, very tricky, of course, to get by a car in racing conditions. Hopefully, if you're a lapped car, you will be a little more courteous, get off the gas and pull aside, but never good. Can always cause an inroads in your gap, and in fact, an inroads has been caused. The gap now down to 3.1 just through that second sector alone.
And the
second loss.
The reason for that was that they came across a battling side-by-side, Van der Vault and Picasa. And Tom Van der Vault actually got round Petikaza for what is now 14th and 15th places. So Tom now clearly deciding points is the way to go. And that was what Parker was dealt with, and he had just wisely sat back and waited for themselves out before making the dive through. And it's now 2.9 seconds, the gap between them. But Redshaw now has to clear Casa and Van der Vault, even though they are now slightly separate. Redshaw being quite held up a smidgy bit there through the last kink.
So we saw it just before sort of the second round of stops. Tommy was able to benefit there from a bit of traffic. Looks like it might have gone the other way. I'm just actually at the moment keeping an eye. We now have Harley Hamlet right on the gearbox of David Filock. They had a good little switch around and switcheroo into turns 1 and 2. And Filock just keeping ahead. Have to keep an eye on this one as they go through the second sector, through the tight chicane, through these deceptively what look fairly fast, but actually, you've got to be fairly medium speed, left-right flicks here, down into turn 11, very fast into the third sector. We know Harley's good through this sector. The gap as we go into the third sector is about 7/10 of a second. We'll see what it is across the start finish, but that Hawkeye car, it just stops and it turns and it goes so brilliantly. You really see that through that turn 12, 13, and 14 section we're currently going through here. The gap was 7/10 of a second. What will it be as we cross the start finish? Oh, it's 5/10, so he's taken a little bit out there. And if he can carry on doing that, he will get by him before long.
Do interestingly as well, actually, when you're looking at the overall gap, it's still just 8.9 behind Tom Parker himself. So despite them now going into battle, overall, Hamlet is still slowly inching forward and gaining little bits.
And that's critical, because even with the fights, they're still doing vaguely the same lap times. I think in pure pace terms, if Harley didn't have any traffic or any dramas to contend with, he would be a good distance out front. That isn't how racing works. You've got to be in the right place at the right time. Tom's definitely been there, and he's quite deservedly leading the race at this point. And Harley, he's having to do it the hard way, but he's doing it in a magnificent fashion. The gap's to 6/10 as they go through the second sector. They can take another few tenths out in this third sector once again. I wouldn't put it past him to have perhaps a little cheeky look to turn 1 this time round.
Taking a look further down now, pretty much all the battles are sorted out. There's a small little scrap going on between Ryan and Jacobs over 19th and fifth places. And Rouse and Covenant are going over 17th and 8th, really towards the back end of the field. Almost all of the other points.
Sorry to speak over, but I think
Redshaw's
he's in the pits. It just crossed my mind. Ooh, might be just about time to get a fresh set of tyres, but no, Redshaw pits. He's down into 4th. He must be going on to some. No,
he's
some
not.
primes.
Gone on to some primes.
That's him to the end of the race then. So that's the marker well and truly set. Parker, when will he go? Will he try and extend and get a stint in on the options, or will he go round next time round? He had a decent gap. He might be able to just get out ahead. We've seen that Redshaw hasn't really had a response so far. As long as Parker can keep it on the island, get a good pit stop in, he should be able to maintain the lead. So fascinating stuff.
My interesting point for Redshaw is that's going to actually be the longest stint that he has done on those tyres, because he's done a 19 lap and a 17 lap. So now he's got to do a 20.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did wonder about his tyre wear because he was the first to blink, and he's again the first to blink. So perhaps he just his driving style or the car setup just a little abrasive on the tyres. The others are able to perhaps mitigate that with a few tweaks here and there. Oh, Parker!
Parker disconnection.
Oh, that is such a pity.
Parker.
Oh goodness, I honestly, gosh, that is just such a shame. He was driving such a superb race to that point. And now Fiduk has inherited the lead after all of this, and now
look at Hamnet.
Oh, he's right up.
And he's going straight for it as well as they come up to lap the Nijo. Tom Parker won absolute stonker of a drive, thoroughly deserving of a victory. And some may say will be the man of the race because of how he has came in as his first race of the year and led, which is no mean feat. You're stepping into some pretty big ass shoes when you're just replacing Ranieri and Cooper and Co. And he's more than risen to the challenge, and we'll wait to see him back in the midnight for some other races this year. But he's made his mark, I think, on the Superleague to show that he is a man of the future as Hagen exits the pits and rejoins in 10th place. But yes, now suddenly Fiduk is in there thinking I'll have podiums regardless. Same potentially for Hamnet as well, because this trio are slightly away from Roland, who's really the only person left who can have an answer for that trio.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a pity because, as you rightly say, Tommy drove an absolutely spotless race to that point. You know, he was able to push when needed. He was able to answer the time for the cars behind him, and that's completely enough to turn the race on its head. So now our leading fight for the actual lead is between Fiduk and Hamnet. And Hamnet, for me, as I was saying a moment ago, he's got the pace in that car.
Oh no, sorry. I was about to scream about someone else retiring, but it was Parker again.
Oh,
sorry. I was like,
oh dear. No. It's all
Let's do the time warp again.
Yes.
The reason why I was getting excited slightly elsewhere as well is that actually has connotations for some other battles further down the field. Green Stripes move up into a 6th position, which allows them to suddenly reel in Kerno, who are not really scoring here today. It also allows Target suddenly into the points, and that, with how they're doing, will draw them level with Phoenix F1, who are not in the points. So there's connotations for that battle further down, as 9th position Morton Burnington comes into the pits and switches on to the option tyres for his finals. Well,
yeah, all sorts of
primes.
It's amazing how one change of position can have ramifications up and down the grid, and as you rightly say, teams will be scoring a handful of points or a bucket full of points over their rivals, and it shows this what one position there and what a big impact that can make.
Neither are pitting again.
Yeah, evidently they're quite happy on their tyres. We'll go as far as we possibly can, and well, they did about 15 or 16 laps on the options. Perhaps they're going to try and eke these tyres out and try and do a final stint on the super sticky tyres. Yeah, it's going to be, as our cameraman extraordinaire says, it is going to be a rather royal ding-dong indeed. So we'll have to see what these two do. The gap is... there's Harley. Yeah, indeed. Harley having another cheeky look through turn 4, but as we've said, not really a way around there unless you can bring it all the way around the outside.
No games on when they pass a sector split and it's only a 10th between them.
But no. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
No, I was just about to say actually, it was it's these two obviously still fighting in Redshaw. The gap stayed around the 18-19 second mark. So on this stint on the new tyres, on the new chrome tyres, he's still not being able to make too great of an inroad. So a shame that. but it looks like it's going to be down between these two cars for potentially our top two, unless there's a drama.
A cross round. I'll tell you what has not helped Lewis Redshaw, who's going on a slightly alternative strategy as they both continue round again, Fidek and Hamnet. He has had the battle, which is essentially 13th, about 17th, 18th position, all battling over points paying positions potentially at the end. Had to get round and lap them all. It doesn't matter how much people just bow out of the way unless they just throw themselves off of the track before you see them. It distracts, or it just holds you up in general anyway.
It's never ideal to come across lap traffic, and of course I'm sure they did their best to try and step aside, but as you rightly say, the cars still have to be somewhere physically on the tarmac, and with the tight and narrow nature of this Hungarian ring, that's it's going to take up a significant percentage of the tarmac available, so it will slow you down nonetheless. In fact, he's dropped 2 seconds, it's now a 20.1 second gap between himself and the leader being David Fidek, and the gap actually between Hamnet and Fidek has increased to 0.5. Was that a sign of perhaps the tyres starting to go a bit on Hamlet's car? Is he just backing off and potentially thinking of when to next attack? We'll have to see. It looks like Hamlet's in. He's gone, right, okay, I'm going to have myself a new set of tyres. Now the next question would be, does he go for primes and get it nice and home and safe, or does he push for those options and attack all the way to the end? I think we are going to have a right ding-a-doo.
Options?
As he has indeed pitted for options, we're going to have a scrap right to the end, and the tyres I'm sure will make it just about, but what state will they be in?
Well, a lovely 9-second stop there. Redshaw is going to leapfrog him and stay in front, but actually the gap between the pair of them much closer than what it was beforehand. Or before the pit stop phase, and now Hamlet on initially faster tyres. Just taking a look at how his tyre prep went at the very beginning of the race. Of course we're on low fuel now, so in theory that will give you an extra, say, lap or so of wear because you're not carrying around the weight, but his lap times would swing wildly, but from about 1.5 to 2 seconds between his fast his fast laps and his slower laps on that sprint at the very beginning when he was on these tyres. So he's going to be brave, but it's going to be a little bit more what's the word? Chaosy as Fidek and the Solicitor.
So this will be the trick here. Obviously, Fidek wants to make sure he gets a good stop in, and I'm sure perhaps even to react he may go on to options himself. Of course, he'll have one less lap to do critically, so he might be able to push a little bit more. So we'll have to see.
On primes.
Oh well, okay. He's gone to the prime compound. He's wanting to get home safe and sound. Then he's got a quicker stop there as well. He's out well ahead of both. Goodness gracious me! How on earth has he got that one done? Well, master pit strategy. We know that CSG pit crew is one of the best out there, and evidently done the work there. And actually, when you think about it, 1.3 seconds between Fidek and Hamlet's stop. What's the gap? 1-point-ish seconds. So there you go. Pit crew helping win the race for CSG there.
Right. Well, fit as a fiddle are the pit crew for Fidek, and that certainly helps him out. Hamnet already onto the back of Redshaw. Now it's going to be the case of what can Hamnet do with the advantage of rubber that he'll have now, especially whilst Fidek's getting up to speed. And Redshaw, though those tyres are nicely warmed and coated and full of cinnamon glazing bliss, or glazing bliss, sorry. Goodness me, Simon, put your teeth in. This is the time now for Hamlet to strike before he starts to feel the effects of accelerated wear.
Absolutely, and as these things go, it's quite a nice little position we've got going here. You know, we've got the driver, potentially the fastest driver on the fastest tyres. He's got 2 cars ahead of him, 1.4 second gap, and he's got 13 laps to make an impact. Now, if he wants this win, he's going to have to work for it, but we've seen that car's looking pretty quick and feisty, but with some team tactics, you never know. Redshaw might go, right, okay, Dave, you've got this one in the bag. I'll take doubting number 2 and go and secure this one for the team.
P2 every time. Redshaw is not... the way how Redshaw goes into turn 2 is he takes a very wide and late entry to that corner and quite often locks up. And that to me is one of his weak points on the way how he's driving around it. So as a driver, you note those weak points, don't you? So you,
Oh yes.
right,
Yeah.
that's where I can get him, that's where he's less confident, or that's where he's a little bit more out of control compared to the rest of the lap, depending on who you're looking at. And Hamnet not able to take advantage that time by, but get a nice, instead of doing the lunge around the outside for one, I'd set yourself up so that you can get a nice early exit from one to do a lunge down the inside for two.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the reason Lewis is, of course, doing that is to try and get the power on as soon as possible and get that run up through 3 and up into 4. Because then, of course, you're in the second sector. Where's the overtaking opportunity there unless you make a mistake?
Oh, Bart DeVos disconnects.
Oh, that's a disaster for the Oddball guys. They again were on some good points. That is not ideal at all. So he will filter down the order and bump a few people up in the midfield. There's still a good scrap action going on. Although the gaps are fairly spread out, there are still plenty of drivers just outside the point who will be fighting to the very end, I'm sure. But no, as I was saying, you've got this situation of wanting to get the power down nice and early. And, as another driver, you look for potential weak points. Yes, okay, the car might be locking up its tyre, but given the nature of the corner action, the camber's falling away, it might just be that the tyre's physically lifting off the ground, nothing to stop that brake from locking completely. And, on our Factor 1, we don't have to deal with flat spots and whatnot, so really there shouldn't be much of a penalty. But, as you quite rightly say, Harley, you'll be studying the back end of that CSG intently, trying to figure out where the weakness is and attack wherever that weakness may be.
Great move by Tom Vandervoort to get around Peter for 11th position as it is now that they've got round the disconnected Bart DeVos. It took him 3 corners to do it, side by side, but I tell you what, great respect between those two, well experienced. The Nijo comes out best, but Torrent will be well pleased for a 12th and a 13th as it is at the moment. Klontz in 14th, Columbus back into 15th now for target. That won't get him ahead of the team ahead of Inkerno in the championship, but Nordzone are looking at a point for 16th potentially. Jacobs is right on the back of Columbus for that final point. Hamnet takes another look down at turn 1, and that's a bit of a waste of time. It's not worked so far. I'm focusing on other corners. I know that's the main one, but Redshaw can see it coming. A bit like at the end of a corner, know what's going to happen.
Well, I think it's a case of, I think if Lewis can hold Harley back here, those tyres are going to go off much quicker than his primes. That it can almost nullify the fact that he's got a faster tyre on. Interestingly though, even though that these two are right up behind each other, they're both catching Fidock. Of course, earlier in the race we saw Fidock, the only way he could really keep up with the battling group, Parker, Redshaw and Hamnet, was when they were fighting. And evidently, Hamnet and Redshaw, they are fighting again, but this time, because Fidock's ahead, he's the one being caught. So we might get a three-way fight here, and well, wouldn't want to have a situation where teammates take each other off. That's very tricky to deal with, but Harley, I think he'll just be sat, he'll be looking for his opportunity. He'll be waiting for those prime tyres, which, let's face it, they're not as grippy, they're not as good as his options. He's just got to find the right place to use that advantage.
Further down the field, it's resolved itself before I could get to it. The battle between 15th and 16th places, Tommy Hagen had spent an entire lap essentially stuck behind. I was waiting for people to be blue flagged for it, but yeah, not great there, unfortunately. Yes, there we are, the leading trio right up against each other. They've got Kieran Ryan, notably a back marker that causes issues once being lapped. And oh! I tell you what, that was pathetic.
Yeah, that was
left a little stain.
Squeaky bum time, I'm sure, for these leading three, because that's exactly what you don't want to see. I mean, if you read any of the textbooks as far as sort of motor racing goes, typically the back markers are advised to stay on the racing lines. The car approaching knows where you're going to be. But of course, you want to be courteous. If you can move off the line, that's always appreciative, I'm sure. But when you go to the inside of a corner like that, it's always a bit scary because you don't know quite where the car's going to try and come back in again. Thankfully, no dramas there, but not what you want to be seeing when you're fighting for the lead after 61 laps.
Definitely. As the leading trio now under a second from each other as they come slingshotting out into the final curve. Lap 61 completed, 9 to go. Hamnet takes a breather out from the back air, not looking at anything this time. Redshaw takes a quick peek at Fidock, and that slows you down onto the apex of turn 1, but no one really close enough to have a go this time round for the first time, I think, in about 6 or 7 laps.
Redshaw, well right, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, contact!
Yeah. Yeah, again, just a little bit cumbersome. Can't really put it into words. Little mistake there from Redshaw. You know, he has been locking up down into that turn 2. Went well wide, shut the door straight away. Unfortunately, Harley's front axle was just about there. I doubt too much damage, if any damage at all, was caused there, but that's exactly what Harley wants to see. You know, that's going to be that little opportunity just to add a little more pressure. All of a sudden, there's an opportunity. So, if Redshaw does that again, he might be in bigger trouble.
Like a scab, as soon as you start picking at it, as soon as you get that little bit of flap and you're thinking, oh, I've made some progress, I know that there is some traction and some flexibility here, and then it just entices you to pick further because it spurs you on, doesn't it, when something like that happens?
It does indeed. It's like a jar of pickle. You can start to feel it go and you're like, oh, come on. But anyway.
Those are baby-proof ones.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
anyway.
No, I bet they're baby-proof and that's why we're all struggling. Normally is for me.
Oh dear. But anyway, last time around, as our drivers complete the 63rd lap, as it was there, or 62nd lap, sorry. Interestingly, of all the drivers, Fardek was definitely the quickest on that one. Just about by a tenth, so I'm sure the little contact between Redshaw and Hamnet would have helped. But interestingly, the last 2 laps now, Hamnet has just been a tenth slower than 2 cars ahead. So perhaps these tires are starting to go. It'll be music to the ears of Fardek and Redshaw, but they've still got 7 or 8 laps here to complete. It's not all over yet.
What else is not all over? Adam Rouse had an absolutely torrid lap last time round. He lost 12 seconds with, I'm assuming, an off because he's not been through the pit lane. It's dropped him to 16th place, and he can see 13th, 14th and 15th. They're all on the same straight with him. So he's like, I would like some points, please.
Yeah, there's motivation right there.
Exactly. And Kerno and Target are battling each other in the championship directly, along with Nordzone and Torrent pretty much were at some point as well. So there's definite honour at stake for those 4 teams in their own separate mini battles as Redshaw gets a great exit out of the final turn.
Yeah, I was actually just about to remark how close Redshaw's been able to get on this lap. 3/10 the gap. And I'd certainly not want to be a team boss at this point because you don't want your drivers knocking each other off the island with so few laps remaining. It's been interesting, you know, there's been a variety of strategies out there, but these two still very close after all that.
Bernardson just a little bit up the road in the Vodball in 10th place, about to get lapped for the 2nd time despite being in 10th. Only 5 drivers on the lead lap, and they are from our Division 1 type of cars, and it's interesting to see that Redshaw did not choose to have a look down at turn 1 particularly, and then thought he'd have one of his goes at 2, and has he gone off?
Oh, I think that was just like, whoa, heart rate. Oh, that was just, I hope, 1 second, sorry, oh, has he gone off? Is that just the camera angle? No, just think it's one of those moments where you get a little bit of lag and it's just the car going straight. You can't tell just after a second, oh, okay, it's just thankful. But as they all pass Wernerson there, who's a lapped car, again, actually he's right up the gearbox with his teammate, and I think Harley, you know, okay, his tyres perhaps not being most sprightly at this point, but if there's any moment between these two, you'll be able to capitalise. In fact, the last time around he just took a little bit out of them both.
Definitely, in the last 2 laps actually, that's the fastest lap that Hamnet has done for a good 5 laps, so I wonder if he's just taking a break and thinking, right, I'll save some rubber for the end if I can, especially if you've got quite a decent haul of laps to get done on this, because everyone kind of went to lap 15 and then binned these tyres, didn't they, and that's exactly what he's got to do, so we can't be full out flat going for it every single lap really.
Now I'm just keeping an eye actually physically where cars are on track. This leading group did not have any traffic for a fairly significant distance, probably about 10 or so seconds. Interestingly though, they are going about 2 seconds a lap quicker than those cars, so they might be able to catch them, so they could be a factor on the final lap. So
I'll get my popcorn, shall I?
Yeah, I think they need it. As Redshaw again, that's the 2nd time through turn 11 there, he's just let the car run out onto the curb. I think it was just about legal, but Harley, he's getting closer ever more. In fact, he's got that gap right down. He'll have seen that and gone, ha ha, my car's good through there, and I have a chunk of you down into turn 11, thank you very much.
Got a good exit again. We've seen him good at the final corner. Runs a little bit wide himself actually. Redshaw sees it coming, immediately goes to the inside line to cover that. Rejoins the racing one, and they all just concertina back up again via slipstreaming action. Places Hamnet great for 2.
Yeah, all controlled. I think might be just a moment here between these three of. Well, I wouldn't put it past them that they'd start thinking, oh, you know, second good enough, or third's good enough. No, absolutely not. They're going to try and push all the way to the end. But at one point, you've got to face the reality of the situation. Because in fact, the gaps have all shrunk to the leader of this leading three.
Oh, having it off.
Oh, good spot. Oh, looks like he just missed a break.
Oh, and Redshaw as well. Did you see
blimey.
that? That was a tank slapper and a half. He put his outside wheels onto the grass and done a proper Harlem shake coming out from that turn.
Yeah, very well held. Yeah, very well held. You know, just a moment like that, with the walls being as close as they are, that could be you losing a wing.
Missing a wheel.
Oh!
Out of the second last corner, he's coming into the pits from 5th position. He's been that good and proper, and he'd gone off actually a couple of corners ago, and has limped it back on 3 wheels on my wagon, hoping that that will repair a wheel. I found in FC it doesn't do it. It's stuck on a actual front wing, but I don't think it's going to replace the wheel, and that is Boldy, I think, out of the race.
That's a real disaster. I mean, especially so close to the end. And yeah, certainly my experience, be it in touring cars or World GT, you lose a wheel, I'm afraid that is your race run, unless you can finish somehow on 3 wheels on your wagon. But given that that was, I think it was a front left wheel, was it not?
Yeah.
Given that most of these corners are right-handers, yeah, that's going to be quite tricky to make the end on well, frankly, mostly on time. Has it really? Goodness gracious!
What the F? That's ridiculous.
Well, the Hawkeye car.
He's in 5th still as he comes back out as well because Chimala was that far back. So actually, nothing ventured, nothing gained. 4 wheels on my wagon, but he's got no front nose cone at all. It's just a front wing hovering by pure magic.
That's quite something. So we know that Hawkeye is pretty quick and handy around a track. Evidently, it's very replaceable parts as well. Anyway,
system, but yeah. So he's back out in 5th, and actually that's a good save because Hawkeye need a double points finish, and they need consistency for this last third of the season to ensure that they maximise on this, because that's what they haven't done in the first 2/3 of the season. Now is the time when they should do it, as Matt Richards bins it into the pit wall, I think, trying to get out of the way.
That was a tad awkward, and I don't know if that was dust or if it was fire or something, but
he's done it on purpose, I think. I think he was so scared of what was going on. He's gone 4 laps down in the Kerno, sadly, but he's let that all go. And is that Redshaw in trouble?
Yeah, Harley's right on the back of him. Redshaw, he's dropped to 2nd. It was, you know, a good 7 tenths he's just lost from somewhere. Harley right on the back of that CSG. Now, it looks like the gap just has sorted itself out perhaps a little bit, but a big time loss there. And we've only got 3 or 2 laps actually remaining. Goodness me, you don't want to start making mistakes now and potentially throw away a really good 2nd place finish.
Crazy stuff from Viaduct there now, 2nd clear. And if Redshaw now has to defend more than attack, that will just play more and more and more into the hands of Viaduct. He's got fresher tyres than the 2 behind him.
Absolutely, and of course let's remember the situation in the Drivers' Championship. Lewis currently leads it, but only by 1 point. So I have a new championship leader if things stay as they are, and more importantly the gap, although still fairly not the largest of gaps, say, it's still going to be a gap all the same in Vidoc's favour. So this could have quite a bearing on things, we'll have to see, but goodness gracious me, Harley, he's really ringing it. Oh my goodness, how good of an exit did he get there, right on the gearbox.
This time or nothing.
Absolutely, he's well alongside, will be latest on the brakes. I think Lewis has just about got that one covered. Can Harley get the undercut? Yes, he can. Can he get the traction down is the bigger question. Yes, he can. He's alongside. Oh, contact. Muscle fighting still
outside.
Going on. Oh, lovely move. What is it? I said to keep an eye out for those outside moves. We saw him all the time in Formula Challenge, but goodness gracious me. Lovely move. He's up into 2nd, and that has even more bearing on the championship. So we've got a few laps here. I'm not sure if I'll be able to reel in Vidocq, but you never know with this. There's traffic involved.
They're battling for position, this season, John, at the bottom end of the top 10. So they need to respect those blue flags and make sure that they don't impact on this battle for the lead. In fact, Missilis there very kindly gets that well out of the way. It's Judd that's not. And he needs to watch where he's going and pull over right now, which he does. But yes, having it there, up into 2nd, and that was a...
Oh, it was a really lovely move there, and traffic almost at the right time just to buy himself a bit of a gap to try and break away, but we'll see what the gap is as they go on to lap 70. The final lap here, I doubt we'll be able to make much of an impact, but what a great way to take 2nd place.
Interestingly, Petacasa has just had to pit from his prime run and switch to options for the last 3 laps, or last couple of laps, and I don't recall him actually running on the options during the entire race, so I think he's doing 1 lap on that, so an interesting strategy there for Torrent. It's worked out well for a 12th position. I just thought that was an unusual go for, so yeah, one shout out to the strategy men. We are on the last lap.
There we are indeed, just going into the second sector for the final time here. Looks like Lewis has gone, okay, that's my race, I'll settle for a podium. The gap's gone up to 3 or so seconds now, or 4 or so. Well, I mean, you can't be angry at yourself at what a quality move that was. I mean, Harley got amazing exit out of the final turn, he just strung it together. He saw that Lewis was walking up into that turn 2, and I think he just put the car in the right place and was able to hang the car all the way around the outside.
Viaduct then, popping a quick lap on Mr. Rousey-Roo and rounding the final corner. And well, I'd said earlier on in the race that he was just shadowing around at the back and I didn't think he had the actual pace to do it, but while everyone else decides to fall by the wayside, he uses his canny nous and strategic knowledge to take the victory here at the Hungaroring for GPVWC Super League for CSG. Beautiful result there. Second place for Harley Hamnet in the Hawkeye, very well deserved for him. Lewis Redshaw still on the podium in 3rd place and nothing to be sneered at all, but that swings the championship challenge into Viaduct's favour for not the first time this year as that duo continue their titanic scrap overall. Nick Rowland will cross the line in 4th position, the final guy to be on the lead lap. Gergo Boldi crosses the line in a beaten up Hawkeye for 5th place. Superb result for Mikhail Tumala, 6th for Green Stripes, ahead of Tommy Hagen, 7th, 1 lap down for Reg Archer. 2 laps down, 8 is David Young, 9th Davidas Missilis, 10th Morten Wernersen, 11th will be Tom van der Voort, who is home now. Petacasa is going to come home 12th so long as he gets around the last 2 corners, ahead of Menno Klont, 13th for Kerno, valuable points for them. Target are going to score points in 14th place so long as he can make it round the last 2 corners. He's got Tom Jacobs right up his chuffer, and the North Zone driver will take the final point in 15th. 3 laps down is Adam Rouse and Tommy Kovanen, as is Kieran Ryan. 4 laps down but still finishing will be Matt Richards, and then your final retirement list: Bart DeVos, Tom Parker sadly, Mark Stanton, all disconnections or pulling offs, as well as Boyd Bryson. And then your crashers out were Roy Schroten, Mark Fuller and Ollie Pelkonen.
Goodness gracious. What a race, honestly. Goodness. I mean, there's strategy we knew would be a part of this because the wear rate and everything else, and of course we knew that that Harley had really got that Hawkeye working well, but goodness gracious me, so many twists and turns, so much unfortunate circumstances
Like the Hungaroring.
well. Yeah, goodness, what a superb race we've just seen, and it really sets up the rest of the season beautifully.
That it does indeed, that it does. And just while we wait for the drivers on the podium to come in, we've been joined quite nicely by Mr. Tom Parker, who on his debut was looking like he was sizing himself up for a big old fat victory. Unfortunately, it looked like his internet service provider had other options. Tom, if you're there, mate, talk us through that, because that was an absolutely stunning drive up until that horrible end.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. The internet was fine. I was on TeamSpeak, I was on everything. Checked internet is fine. It's just been a microsecond. I mean, it didn't even tell me our connection lost. Didn't even tell me. Just quit the game. But yeah, I drove alright.
You drove better than all right, honestly. You drove with some real maturity out there, and honestly, if it wasn't for that, I don't think anyone really could have challenged you, because you were matching everyone, you were pushing when you needed to. It really was a superb drive. And yeah, just a really, really sad way to lose that, I would say, almost certain win.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Lewis was struggling, I knew David was a bit far back, but I don't know, I mean, you don't know what could have happened. It could have had a bit of trouble with back markers. I mean, the back markers today were a bit iffy, some of them, personally speaking, but what can you do? What can you do? Hopefully I'll get another chance by the end of the season. It's unlikely, but it'd be nice.
I thought you were sharing the car, though.
No, I was just doing this one race.
Well, one thing I'll say...
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'll say is, well, you've put yourself really nicely in shop windows, that's for sure, if it's not for this year, but certainly for next. No, it's a real pity you're driving superbly there.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Well done, David, for the win. Brilliant job, thank
you.
Well, I'd buy Mr. Parker at full price without discount, so there's an endorsement for you. We have been joined, though, by the race winner again, and my goodness me, I'm going to call you the old back alley snatcher, because quite frankly, you look like he was off the podium for a lot of that race, and yet you come out swimming with roses with your fiddly Fiduk pit crew that seemed to work an absolute charm for you, and the in and out laps for yourself as well. So talk us through that, because that was an eventful one.
Eventful, my god, I was sweating before the lights went off.
So were we.
Yeah, but for a different reason. Yeah, the start was. I had a good launch initially, but I got a bit of wheel spin, so stayed fourth. I knew Lewis was much quicker than me, so my strategy the whole race was to just keep it smooth all race and save the tyres and go a couple laps longer each stint, which for the first 2 stops I thought, oh my god, this failed, I'm not going to do this. But then the third stop, I managed to get a few clear laps when Lewis pitted and managed to come out ahead, which gave me the win, but it doesn't feel like it, to be honest. This is Tom's race, 100%. Yeah, I wish I could give him something, but I can't. But, this is Tom's.
That's very sporting of you, and I think that just shows actually how good of how much respect there is here in the Super League. I mean, I must admit, I saw it earlier in Silverstone, David. You're able to put the car in the right place at the right time. You're able to do those consistent laps, so we were concerned up here in the box because we didn't quite know what the strategies would play out like. We've seen various wear rates across the week so far. How bad were the tyres? Were they something that you had to set the car up to try and preserve, or was it just the nature of the track that they would go away from you?
The nature of the track were just, they were destroying the tyres. To be honest, it's more down to driving style rather than setup because, 2 weeks of testing, we couldn't find no way of getting it under 5% a lap on the options, which is just too much for this track. With the heat as well, it just, it killed him. But yeah, I wasn't too confident either. But the old saying is the championship is a marathon, not a sprint, and I don't like taking massive risks during races. If I'm battling, I'll just wait for the pit stops rather than chuck it down the inside and all this. Like when Harley was battling with me, he was lagging so bad, so I had to let him through just so I didn't take the risk. But the pit stops, because I was driving smoothly, the pit stops I could get a few laps longer than everyone else. The second stop, I nearly buggered completely. I got in the pit with 0.2 fuel left. I'd done 1 lap too much, but it's a crazy race.
Here. It certainly was a crazy race from where we're sat. So huge congratulations on yet another podium. And as you say, championships, they're definitely not sprints. They are marathons, and you're certainly going away or around in the right way to put a serious mark on this championship. So congratulations, David. And
Thank
we
you very
look
much.
forward to seeing you in a few weeks in Spa.
Oh yeah.
And actually, since it is my trademark question for you, David, just for signing off, is there a race this year where you think you might not be on the podium? Or like if you were to play Russian roulette and say that'll be the one that will go tits up, what one do you think it might be?
Brazil.
Okay.
The heavy braking tracks suit me more than Brazil's fast and flowing. Suzuka, Brazil. Are we doing Suzuka? We are. Aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Second
So them
last.
2 will be the hardest for me. Saying that, turn 1's the hardest braking zone on this track, and I don't know if you guys noticed. Sector 1, I lost 2-3 tenths to Lewis and Tom, but then sectors 2 and 3, I was quicker. So yeah, those 2 tracks. I mean, I love driving every track. I love the challenge of setting the car up to the bumps on each track, to the curbs, to the apexes. I thrive on that stuff. And Spa, my favourite track, being next. Spa, Monaco, can't decide, but one of them 2. They're both my top 2 anyway. So yeah, I forgot your question. I'm too excited, but Brazil.
That's okay.
Yeah,
You've
Brazil will
answered
be
it.
my
It was all
most
good.
unlucky. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mr. Championship leader of 2014 currently as it stands, serve a ice cream.
Mm.
So
Yeah, 3 or
whatever
4.
way you go with. Yeah,
Cheers, guys.
no problem.
Thank you.
Let's hope he doesn't do one for each podium, otherwise we might have to get him in with a stomach pump. However, thank you very much. So, as we start to round off the show, I think it's time. Caravan Extraordinaire's thought of the day, please.
Brilliant racing. Thoroughly enjoyed watching it all, and like probably most people that I've seen on Facebook and whatnot, absolutely gutted for Parker. I know what it's like when your internet connection doesn't quite play ball, but I'm sure he'll get another chance, and I'm sure he'll do just as well.
Absolutely, it's just a hallmark of what a great league this is. That there's so much respect, even for a driver who's put in such a great race and to lose it so cruelly. I think we've all been there where we've disconnected, where we've been in a good position, and it's so nice to see such camaraderie amongst the drivers.
Just actually as a note, I think I know where you're heading with this, but if you were to do a Chuggy's Chug of the Day, who would you name it?
You want to know something? It may be perhaps a bit stereotypical given all the love, but honestly, Parker, he drove such a good race. And honestly, anything that anyone could have thrown at him, even Harley with what seems to be the quickest car on that in the grid today, I reckon he would have been able to hold on to it. So a cruel fate there, but Tom, honestly, anyone, if you want a driver, looks like Mr. Parker is going to be your man.
Well, fate is a bitch, and then a lot of you marry one. And we are going to be marrying up with one feisty little lady when we return in 2 weeks' time for the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps. We will be doing the Formula Challenge race itself on the 12th of August. That's a Tuesday, where you can watch me be generally quite terrible on the eve of my last point scoring 1 year ago. But Mr. Chuggy himself will be alongside for commentating on that. Wednesday, we will have the Cup itself, which will be all of the joyous fun on the Wednesdays. Then Thursday we'll be back for Super League, where we can see exactly what on earth will happen in this titanic battle for the championship between the CSG drivers, and exactly what will Midnight and Hawkeye do to finger in all of their pies and ruin the show. Thank you so much for everyone for watching. Thanks for Simrace TV for their support as well, and race director Dave Carl Smith. You lot are all fantasticos, and we'll see you. Bye for now.